Welcome into One-on-One Nightly. I'm Ryan Gregoire. I'm joined with Nick Fada. Andrew Galata is going to be joining us in a bit. And Nick, we just had a huge week of football, week 17. The playoffs are set. Super wild card weekend is going to start this weekend. It's super this year because we got the extra game both days. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the games. And then we have some head coaches getting fired. The Jets' Adam Gase is finally gone. The Gase tenure is over. And we have some other teams as well. We'll also talk about some NBA stuff. The Knicks are looking good, some other things around the league, and we'll close out with some Heisman and college football talk. But Nick, I want to start first with the Giants. So going into week 17, we all knew that they had a slim shot at the playoffs. They had to beat the Cowboys and hope the Eagles defeated the football team. They did part one at 1 o'clock. They beat the Cowboys 27-23. And then their fate lied in the 4-10-1 Eagles hands. And the Eagles, unfortunately for Giants fans, did not win that game. So Nick, I just want to start off with what you thought, because there's a lot of controversy with tanking with the Eagles. What was your reaction watching that game?
Yeah, I'll try and be as non-biased as I can be, but it's frustrating. The Eagles, I believe, are I think every team in the NFC East is much better than they performed this year. Injuries obviously plagued that whole division, but with that game, it was more so just so frustrating to see. It's a 3-point ball game. Never have I ever rooted for the Eagles, but here we are sitting there saying, let's go. And then bye-bye Hurts. And you're bringing in a third-string quarterback to see what you have, Doug Peterson. I don't buy it. I know a lot of other people don't buy it. That's why I'm frustrated. But we talked about this before the show, and this is what I've come to as my final decision. Two things. A 6-10 football team should never be in the playoffs. That's horrible. You don't deserve it. And B, if you have to rely on another team, a 4-10-1 team nevertheless, to beat another team to get you into the playoffs, you clearly did not do enough. Maybe you get lucky, and unfortunately they didn't get lucky. So the odds were not in the Giants' favor, but I don't really think they necessarily should have been. Do I think the Eagles could have won that game? Absolutely. But if it just didn't go that way.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this, with this weekend and these two games. But first, I want to look in the Giants' perspective. Overall, I know 6-10 isn't the best record, but you're playing meaningful football week 17 when you started the year 1-7, right? So Joe Judge was able to get those guys going. But the one thing I want to turn to, which you highlighted as a Giants fan, 6-10 is not acceptable to make the playoffs. Logan Ryan said it best. He said, you had a lot of players also like complaining on Twitter and stuff like that, but Logan Ryan, I thought, handled it really well. He said winning 6 games doesn't give us much right to be pissed off about this. We didn't play consistent enough all year to earn it. And that's true, right? As you said, if you're leaving your fate in a 4-10-1 football team's hands, you have to take what you get with a grain of salt. Obviously, you want to talk about Sudfeld and how you don't feel that it was looking for something to prove. I just want to talk about Nate Sudfeld for a second because he's been on the Eagles for 40 years. He's not some journeyman practice squad guy they called up last week and they're just throwing him out there, right? This is a guy who's been with the organization for 4+ years. They kept him on the roster with Nick Foles when he was the backup, so they clearly think highly of him. Last offseason, actually, they placed a second-round tender on him. So he is a guy that they do that he's been in the organization, as I just said. And going into the game, all week, Doug Peterson did say he was going to see some action in this game. He was going to take some snaps. He's a free agent at the end of the year. You do want to see what you have. Can he be a backup? Who knows what's going to happen with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts? That's a whole nother discussion. But if you need Nate Sudfeld to play emergency football, you want to see if he can do it. You're eliminated from the playoffs, so this game doesn't mean much. But the one thing I will say that I think Giants fans, and I know you are probably frustrated about, is the timing. Because it's coming off, the Eagles have a chance to tie the game, right? Hurts misses a guy in the end zone, he underthrows it. And it looks like they did have the momentum. They're forcing stops left and right. And that's when you do it in the beginning of the fourth quarter. Personally, I would have went to him at halftime just because if you're going to give him snaps like you said you would, at least give him half the game. But the other thing I want to highlight is it's not like Jalen Hurts was lighting up the game. He did probably give him the best chance to win, but he was 7 for 20 with 35% of his passes completed for 72 yards and a pick. So he wasn't really lighting it up. And I guess that could also be a reason you want to see him in the game, right? If you're the Eagles, because maybe he is your franchise quarterback. You don't know what's up with Wentz. So you want to see him gut out a full 4 quarters and get as much body of work as possible. But if you already committed to playing Sudfeld, I think you have to do it. And I don't really have a problem with the Eagles doing it. And I don't think Giants fans should be ones to complain too much because you went 6-10 and you couldn't control your own destiny. You got your record to 5-7 and you had control. You were in first and you dropped 3 straight. So if you win just one of those games, you're in the playoffs right now. So going 6-10 with everything that happened, I don't think they have much to argue about. But obviously, there's the tanking element, which is a very fascinating one.
Yeah. I think you said it perfectly. It's the timing. The timing of it really was the tough part. You're engaged in this game as a Giants fan for the reason of Eagles win, you're in. Never would I ever watch this game otherwise. But the real tough part is you see it as a close game and you're so into it. And sure, you want to run Sudfeld, like you said, do it at half. Or put him in for a drive at the end of the game when it's already all said and done. Or if they were to be getting blown out, or if they were blowing them out, any sort of scenario like that. Not when it feels like there's a chance. Well, I'm sure Eagles fans really didn't care. I'm sure they wanted to lose. They jumped from I think it was the 9th pick to the 6th pick.
Yep.
So I'm sure they're all happy. And I know a few guys on that Eagles side who definitely wanted that to happen. And it is tough because I think any New York fan sees Philly as more of a rival than Washington. If the Giants are going to make the playoffs for us, I would rather Washington do it. So that's the one thing. I got nothing really against Washington. But it's just tough, I guess. Joe Judge, actually, in the post-game interview, not post-game interview, after that game, he made a statement. And it was very long-winded, and I was kind of unsure where it was going. But it was just really all about class. And I guess, again, I'm frustrated, and I think a lot of other people frustrated. You could point fingers anywhere. You have no idea, really, what the motives were with Doug Peterson, what the motives were with the entire Eagles team. But it does seem from an outside perspective, and a lot of guys on that team, which I think is going to be the real repercussion from that game, a lot of guys are going to give up on Peterson. And what Joe Judge said is that his football team with the Giants will never be taking the foot off the gas. It's always 100% playing as hard as you can, no matter, you could be 0-16, you could be 15-0, whatever the record is, whatever the scenario is, it's never foot off the pedal and let's see what we got. It's very different approaches. I'm not saying, I'm not happy with Doug Peterson. I don't think he should be a coach in Philly anymore, but that was his coaching decision to do that. So as a coach, you have to respect it. Do I think he should be fired? Absolutely. But it's just tough when you see that. It almost seemed like they were giving up in a way. And that's what I think is really the hard thing to swallow as a Giant fan. You said it perfectly. We got to deal with it. but it's the hard part to swallow. It seemed like they were giving it up.
Yeah, it should be noted Doug Peterson is expected to be back. And is this a move that he makes without knowing he has that comfort? I don't know.
Yep.
Maybe not played a role. He's probably known he's going to be back. He is a Super Bowl winning head coach. I think it would be a little rash to move on from him now. It's the first year they haven't made the playoffs really since Carson Wentz's rookie year. And I do think it's interesting you're saying losing the locker room because there were a lot of guys upset. You had Jason Kelsey. This was all over the place. He had a quote about a few weeks earlier how they're going to play their butts off every week and try their hardest. And I guess you could say what we saw on the field wasn't indicative of that. And it's not on the players and it's not on Sudfeld. He tried his best.
Yep.
Everyone was trying their best out there. But I guess where it gets frustrating is it's the coach making the decision to pull Hurts and play and go with Sudfeld. So I do think that is something that it's going to be on Giants fan minds the rest of the offseason. I'm sure the Eagles fans, as you said, were happy about that loss because, they got to end the Giants season really in a way with the loss and moving up with a pick. But now taking a step back with the Giants, because this year, obviously, there were high expectations, right? You had management saying that they wanted to see a step forward in order to keep Gettleman and keep this regime intact. And the thing I just want to ask you is we just heard the news a few days ago. Gettleman will stay the GM of the team. Do you think that this year was a step in the right direction? Was it enough to warrant keeping Gettleman after 3 straight double-digit losing seasons?
Yes, and I think this is the luxury I give. As much as he can't control what goes on with the players, how they play, obviously, like I said before, the injuries were everywhere. Giants were missing a few linebackers. They had a few guys come and step up, make some plays, but again, it wasn't enough. But then also, a player who goes down in week 2 is the best player, arguably a top running back, the top, if not one of the top running backs in the league, in Saquon Barkley. So my real thing is you never saw, I guess, what the entirety of this Gettleman squad that he put together, and he didn't do everything, of course, but you never saw what the full team can do when healthy. And you may never see that with certain teams. Injuries are part of sports. No matter what, you're going to find them. But for me, I really think I was content. And again, like you said, and this is why I'm content because you go through week 17 and you're still competing for something. That hasn't happened for any New York football fan in a few years now. Yeah. Many tough years. So that is kind of the hope I have. I'm hoping still, Daniel Jones, the young O-line. I think the Giants started in week 17. I think it was almost an entirely rookie or second year O-line. So you got to hope that those guys can kind of move forward and progress. So I think with Gettleman, I've questioned a lot of his decisions. Some of them have worked great. Like he brought back James Bradbury. That was Pro Bowl corner, one of the best corners in the league. Great move. I didn't see that coming. Not a lot of people did, and boom, it worked. But that's why he has the job. So I do think I would give it another year for sure to see what happens. I'm not saying it should be a guaranteed playoff berth because the NFC East is always just mayhem. But I think he's done enough as to what he can do. Again, he can't prevent injuries. He can't prevent COVID, guys missing games from COVID. Of course, no one could do that. So I think if you can get this full team, the legs underneath them with everyone full power, then you kind of can address and fully analyze what he's done with the team. And I think that, knock on wood, that's hopefully what next year can do.
Well, the thing that I'm kind of thinking about is I feel like there would have been more, you ended up keeping him. I think there was more reason to let him go than keep him. I do think it's really close because you highlighted James Bradbury. He did reshape that defense. You had Leonard Williams, who had a breakout year, former Jet, who was a 6th overall pick, didn't really do much, and he got criticized for the deal, but he had 11.5 sacks. You had Blake Martinez playing at a Pro Bowl level also. So I think this offseason, he did enough. And the most important decision he made was hiring Joe Judge. He whiffed on the previous head coach and Pat Shurmur. That did not work out. But it appears for the time being, he got this one right. But just taking a step back, I think it's really interesting to see the new kind of Giants philosophy because you had Jerry Reese, who was the GM for 10 years, there for 2 Super Bowls. In his 3 worst seasons, which were towards the end of his run and towards the end of Eli's run, they went 15-33. And that's the exact record that Gettleman has through 3 seasons. And I think this is about stability, right? Because the Giants, they've had four head coaches since 2015.
Yep.
They have the second most losses in the league since 2017. So for the Giants, it's about getting back to what they were maybe 10 years ago, right? You had the two Super Bowl runs. And it's an interesting thing because I had friends who are Giants fans, and I was texting them about this game, like the Eagles game. Like, you should just be lucky, right? You're 6-10 and you're playing meaningful football. You're watching a game that can decide your season. Week 17, and they were saying, this is unacceptable for the Giants way. I grew up watching Super Bowls, and now I'm relegated to a 6-10 team, and it's supposed to be a positive. So I think it's really interesting to see how in Eli's later years, and now they've kind of tailed off. They went through a really dark stretch with Pat Shermer and the Ben McAdoo years, where they were, maybe the laughing stock in New York, right? They maybe overtook the Jets. Good news for you, the Jets took that title back.
Yeah, very
But
quickly.
it is interesting to see them keep a guy who just has not won. He's had double-digit losses every year, but I guess they feel he's done enough. Now, the one thing I will say is I think he's tied to Daniel Jones. I
Yes.
think if Daniel Jones does not work, he does not work.
Yes.
And I feel like next year is the prove it year for Daniel Jones. He's going to have to he's going to have to make progress. And I think Gettleman is tied to him because that was a move that, again, like many, it was unorthodox. It was one they didn't see coming. And at this point, you had a 6-10 team. He didn't really look great, Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
He played hurt in a few games. He showed toughness, but you're going to have to see more of him if he's going to be the franchise guy. But just going back to Gettleman and keeping him, I do think it was an interesting decision. And I think at the end of the day, it just goes to stability. They want to get this franchise. The Maras knew what they were, right? They've been there through the Super Bowl runs. They know this used to be a blue blood franchise. And I think at the end of the day, they're just trying to get back to that.
Yeah, and I think that's totally spot on. And then the other thing I almost can kind of put together with that is you said how 5 head coaches or 4 head coaches in the past 6 years. So the coaching is one part, and then the management, of course, is the other. I think the Giants are trying to almost build something that is solid instead of, I think Shermer was there for 2 seasons, and those seasons were terrible. McAdoo had that one great season. I think it was 2016. Giants got bumped in a horrible wild card game against Green Bay. But you're getting rid of these coaches quickly, and then now the whole team has to readjust, right? With the management, with Gettleman, I think they're trying to do the opposite now. Okay, let's not get this guy out of here right away. He has made some promising moves like we talked about. But now let's see exactly what you said. Next year's the prove-it year for Jones, I think for Gettleman, and maybe just the whole Giants team to really see, okay, you guys could have made the playoffs. There were a few games, many games actually, where the Giants could have came out victorious, and they just didn't. So it's really up to next year to prove, for Gettleman to prove, for Daniel Jones to prove, for Saquon Barkley to prove when he comes back. The whole team really, and again, it starts with management, of course. Players got to go out and play, but Gettleman is, of course, responsible for putting the team together. Now that you have this 4 years now, 4th year, Daniel Jones entering his 3rd year, show us what you really got now. It's no more rookie time. You got to develop. You got to turn what you're supposed to have into the league's talent. You're the quarterback for the New York Giants. You're a quarterback for the New York Jets. You're a quarterback on a big stage. You got to show out, and you got to prove that you can play there. And then if you can after a few seasons, okay, then that's when you say goodbye. And I think the same rule applies for both Jones and Gettleman, exactly what you said. It's tied together, and they got to prove next year, year 4, let's do it.
Yeah, for sure. In my little thing before, I brought up how the Jets definitely surpassed them as a laughing stock. Let's get to them now because they fired Adam Gase. As a Jets fan, we were basically throwing a parade when this happened, but it is depressing to realize we wasted another, this was supposed to be the new era. The Sam Darnold era is likely coming to an end, but Adam Gase is fired after 2 seasons, right? They win 9 games in those 2 seasons. There's a ton to unpack with that, but Joe Douglas, he's had enough. If you remember, he's not the guy who hired Adam Gase. Adam Gase actually hired him, which is a strange dynamic because what team builds their franchise with quarterback, then head coach, then GM, no winning ones. It's always the opposite direction there. But Joe Douglas fired Adam Gase. Christopher Johnson, who is the acting owner for now, said that Joe Douglas is going to have complete control and the final say over the new head coach, which is interesting because that's not been the way in the past. But Adam Gase is gone. What was your reaction to hearing the news, Nick?
Uh, it should have happened long ago, in my opinion. I think a lot of people agree with that. I guess at this point, you want to just you wanted to finish the season out. I think it was known news before the Week 17 game for the Jets that he was going to get the boot. But yeah, there's no reason that guy should be there any longer. I think he overstayed his welcome. Really, he is supposed to be some offensive mind, and the Jets' offense was just disgusting. It was terrible. It was just I don't even know. I think terrible is an understatement. And again, the Jets were riddled with a lot of issues too. Darnold seems I don't know. He's a whole nother puzzle to solve, but he seems like he couldn't stay on the field for a full season. I mean, Joe Flacco didn't play terribly, but you got Frank Gore running as their number one back. Really, as a 37-year-old, and then of course some receivers get hurt, but injuries are you gotta adjust. And I mean I'm surprised they won 2 games, frankly, because they were that bad this season. I don't think the Jets were as bad as they played through a lot of games. Maybe they were though, but it's on Gase. It's really on Adam Gase because you had 2 years. The first year, it's just like you could bring it back to what we just talked about with coaching. You have 1 year, you suck. Okay, that's fine. Prove me wrong that you're not that bad. It was a hoax that first bad year, right? Prove me wrong. And they were 7-9, the Jets last year. Darnold got hurt as well. So you had these things that maybe, okay, Gase, now we're back. Show us what you got. And the same issue happened again, just worse. Just so much worse. I wouldn't have predicted the Jets go 2-13 this year. I thought they might have gone 500. But again, you have a lot of these issues, and really a lot of it was Gase at the top calling the plays. I think he actually stopped calling plays. More than I do.
Pop picked it up. Yeah, it was
right.
It was all over the place.
So that goes to show that you shouldn't be a head coach. And I also talked about as well. I think Gase had no spirit, really, no energy on the sideline, in the locker room. Really, he didn't seem like a coach who could kind of build the culture and a guy that the team would follow. And that's really the issue at the end of the day. He wasn't a great coach, and he wasn't a great locker room guy. So if you're not going to have at least one of those things somewhat hunkered down, sorry, you don't deserve the job. And I think he should have been fired halfway through the season, maybe even earlier.
Right. There is this Jets blog out there. Jets fans will know what I'm talking about. It's Jets X Factor, and they just released an article about the 5 defining stats from the Gase tenure, which was 2 years. And there were 3 of them I thought perfectly summed up what went down during the Adam Gase tenure. So the first one is through 8 games both years, they had a combined 1-15 record. Their only win was week 5 of last season against the Cowboys. Other than that, they lost every single game. And as you talked about last year, they started 1-7. They win 6 of 8 to end the year. And there was a mirage. They end the year strong. Is this a sign of things to go? It was fool's gold. If you look into those games, they played terrible teams, and they still almost lost to these teams. They were also the first team last year in NFL history to lose to 2 0-7 teams or worse. The crazy thing is that isn't even one of my stats to say. That's just another thing that they did wrong. They also, in his tenure, they had a negative 297 point differential, which is the worst in the league in that stretch. Right. So they were you talked about no spirit, and it is something to say how the guys did try till the end this year. But if they're not trying in the first half and your season's already over, what good does it do? Exactly. So they were getting embarrassed these last 2 years. I can't tell you how many blowouts I watched. And there's a reason, even though we went 7-9, the games we lost just felt so exhausting last year, right? And so the last stat that I have is, the average NFL team loses by 9+ points around 24% of the time. In Adam Gase's tenure, they were more than double that at 53%.
Wow.
So that's more than half your games getting blown out. And if you ask any Jets fan, it is more than that 53%. I don't care what the numbers say. It's probably only not 53% because maybe they score a garbage time touchdown or a field goal late in the game to cut it to a 10-point game. But just more than not, they were getting blown out. They were getting embarrassed. Gase couldn't innovate. He couldn't capitalize. This year, I think they led the league in first scoring drives, right? So their first drive, they scored more than any team in the league. And then after that, they just wouldn't score until halftime. They wouldn't score the rest of the game in some games. And it just got exhausting for Jets fans. The writing was on the wall around week 5 this year. And then I think, as you said, you said he should have been fired then. At that point, the season was a wash. You may as well keep him and try to lose as many games as possible because he'll do a great job of helping you lose. He couldn't lose right because they won those 2 games at the end of the year to play out of the number 1 pick. But the Adam Gase tenure in New York was an utter failure. Mike Maccagnan, it was really the last move he made as head coach was one that didn't work out like many of his moves. And so Joe Douglas now, we gave him a 6-year deal to be the GM of this team. This is an exciting time for Jets fans in that perspective because he does offer a lot of promise, Joe Douglas. He had a good draft class. He says the right things. He's highly respected. And now he's going to get the chance to choose his head coach. And it should be noted that he did say the new coach, they're not looking offense or defense. They're looking for a culture guy. And I think that's the perfect fit because when you look at what this team did bad, it was the culture. You didn't have guys playing hard. You didn't have people fighting for the head coach. And that's what needs to change. You need to bring in a guy who's going to inspire others. Joe Judge, as you said, he might not be the most talented head coach. He's not an offensive guru or anything like that, but he inspired his guys. And that's what the Jets are going to strive to do. But it is good to know that Adam Gase is gone. Those were the 2 longest years of my life as Jet fans. I dreaded every single Sunday, Monday, and Thursday that they had to play with him as their head coach.
Yeah, and I almost wonder too, with the culture idea, I think you take a page out of another New York team that's been in the gutter with the Knicks. Knicks hire Tom Thibodeau. That's a culture guy. Instantly, and we'll talk more about that later. But Jets got to go right in that same direction. Who? I'm not sure because there are so many options out there. And knowing the Jets so far, they may make a bad decision, but we'll see soon. It'll be exciting for you as a Jet fan, and hopefully, I hope you guys get someone good. New York team's got to stick together. So,
yeah. So we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna be joined by Andrew. We're gonna preview some of Saturday's big playoff games. Stay tuned. And so Saturday is the beginning of Super Wild Card Weekend. I talked about it in the opening. They added the Super this year because we added an extra playoff spot. So now we have 3 games on Saturday and Sunday. We're going to preview the Saturday games. So first up at 1 o'clock, we have Buffalo versus the Colts. The Bills are 6.5-point favorites. It's the first home playoff game in Buffalo since 1996. So it's a long time waiting for Bills fans. They finally get their home playoff game. Andrew, I'm going to start with you. What are you looking forward to the most in this game?
I mean, I want to see that, with the Bills right now, they're playing so hot. They're playing basically the best football in the league right now. And I think, when you look at them not getting the bye, I think almost helps them because just the way they're passing the ball with Josh Allen right now, they just look really good. The way Stephon Diggs is playing, the connection's all the way there. And I heard something interesting this weekend. It's really those teams that don't run the ball well, which they don't run the ball the best, usually they falter in buys. And now they don't have a bye. They can keep that passing, what they're doing there. They can do all that now going into wild card weekend. They don't miss a beat. It's all the same routine. And I think that's going to really help them. I mean, I think they're going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it pretty handedly. I think the only way the Colts stay in this game, if they can control it, if they can kind of play an ugly game, they play a physical one. Jonathan Taylor, who's rushed over 1,100 yards, he's got 11 touchdowns, 5 yards a carry. If they can play possession ball, keep Josh Allen off the field, I maybe could see them winning, but I think that game may get into like a quote unquote shootout, and I think Josh Allen's going to be able to put up some big points, and I see them getting the win, keeping the good times rolling into the divisional round.
Yeah, if that shootout happens, I don't think there's a way Indianapolis can win.
No.
Yeah, the Bills, I think, are a better team. Actually, if you look at the defenses, it's tougher to decide. But overall, the Bills are a better football team, and they are a much hotter football team, like you said, Andrew. So it's to me, it seems almost impossible that they could lose this football game. The one concern I have is I love Josh Allen. I'm totally on his hype train and everything he's done in Buffalo this season. He's been great. But the concern that I could have is maybe he gets a little nervous or anxious, whatever you want to call it, in his first playoff game, especially at home. But I don't think that really makes sense because they've just been so good the whole season, and not having that bye, I agree, it totally helps them. I've got Indy. I think they're easily covering 6.5. I think they may win by anywhere from 10 and up. So that's my pick.
Yeah, it's interesting that you guys are both saying it's better than on the bye because, we saw last year the Ravens were the hottest team going into the playoffs. They had the bye, and it probably slowed them down. And to your point, the Bills, they have won 6 straight. They're averaging 38 a game over this win streak. So they are locked in right now. And Josh Allen, as you said, maybe he falters in his first home playoff game. But during this win streak, he's been as good as anyone in the league, 16 touchdowns, 3 picks. And when you look at it from the Colts perspective, they went 2-4 against teams over 500. We just saw them had to fight their way against the Jaguars. It got kind of ugly. It got kind of scary a little bit on Sunday. But the one thing I will say that does go to the Colts' favor, and I talked about this last week and why I liked the Ravens to play the Bills if they met, is the running game. Right now, the Bills, they went 26th in the league in opponents' yards per carry. And as you guys brought up, Jonathan Taylor has been a superhero the last, 6 games. He's rushed for 741 yards, 7 TDs. The Colts found their identity. It's to run the football with him. He had 30 carries against the Jags for, I think, 240 plus, and keep Philip Rivers to make those huge mistakes that he's made in the past. Also important to note, this could be the last game we see Philip Rivers. So is it one last ride, Philip Rivers? Maybe he shocks the world. I'd be a little surprised, but as you said you could see this being a shootout. And if that does happen, the Bills have to be the favorites here. The Colts offense, even if Jonathan Taylor plays amazing, it cannot keep up with Josh Allen. They're just a machine right now. They're unstoppable. As Andrew said, the only way to win is to keep it ugly. Colts are 5th in the league in turnovers right now. So you hope, if you're a Colts fan, you can force Josh Allen into a few bad throws and you run the football really, really well. That's their only shot, I think, of winning this game. But as of right now, I have the Bills barring something crazy. And I think just with their offense, they're unstoppable right now. I don't know how you could pick against them.
Yeah, I think that's something big. I think turnovers is big. This Bills team kind of reminds me, the way their offense is playing, I'm a big Saints fan. I'm going to bring it back to 2011, how good that offense was playing. And they lost in the playoffs because of turnovers. In their playoff loss, I think they had 5 turnovers, and they only lost by 3 points. That's the type of game the Colts are going to have to play to win. I don't think they do it the way Josh Allen's playing. And against the Dolphins, I believe they turned it over twice, but I think one of them was with Matt Barkley. But you saw Josh Allen dropping dimes on Byron Jones, Xavier Howard, the best secondary in the league. And he was just outstanding, almost lights out in that game. And again, the Dolphins were a lot more motivated to play that game too. And Josh Allen still dropping dimes, did it Bill Belichick the week before. Again, I really think this Buffalo team can go places. I think them playing, no bye, I think helps them. It's that same routine. And you talk about Josh Allen and maybe he has some jitters. With no to little fans, I don't think there will be. Because to really any other game, he's probably played high school games or college games with more fans that are going to be in attendance. And it's almost like any other game. I think that's a big thing when you look at these playoff games and maybe younger teams, it won't affect them as much because you don't have the home field advantage. Again, I really like the Bills in this one and to kind of keep their storybook run here.
So yeah, you guys both took the Bills. I'll take them too. I'll take them to cover. I have them 34-24. I think this will be Josh Allen's coming out party in the playoffs at least. Last year he looked a little shaky against Houston, but this will be the one that gets them on track, and they'll move on to the next round. So the next game we have is the Seahawks versus the Rams. It's at 4:40 Eastern Standard Time. It's in Seattle. The Seahawks won that division. It'll be the third time these teams play this year. Right now, the Seahawks are 3.5-point favorites, but I think that comes down to Jared Goff's availability. Sean McVay said earlier that there's been no decision made, but he did practice today, which is a new revelation and a new development. So if Jared Goff plays, Nick, do you see the Rams maybe pulling off a mini upset here, or do you think the Seahawks can ride the ship and get to the next round?
Yeah, if Goff's in, there's a chance, I think. I love this matchup. I think it's just a great playoff game. It's great playoff football. You have two of the best coaches in the league. But me personally, I love Russell Wilson. I think he's just going to work his magic. That guy is just one of the best performers sports has right now. And they have some tools. If you guys remember last year, DK Metcalf went off in their first playoff game. I could see the same thing happening again. Both teams are very, I think it's a pretty evenly matched game. I think people forget that the Rams were in the Super Bowl just a few years ago. They're nowhere near that team anymore, but they are definitely still a great football
team. Defenses.
Yeah, right. But I think, I've got Seattle. I think it will be a close game, though, for sure. I think that line makes sense. I just have the utmost confidence this year in Seattle. I know they've been iffy in certain games. Maybe the offense isn't on one game, the defense is, vice versa. But I trusted in the playoffs, I think, especially at least through this first wild card round. Russ is going to get his guys going, and they're going to come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I love Russell Wilson, and I feel like, he's one of the few quarterbacks in the NFC that I actually like besides Drew Brees and what the Saints are doing. So I do love Russell Wilson, but I just don't like what Seattle's doing. I think they're an incomplete team. And what really kind of concerns me with them is that you look at their offensive line, defensive lines, there's holes there. And you look at the Rams, and their defensive line's probably one of the best in the league, if not the best, with Aaron Donald. And I feel like if there's a defense to stop what Russell Wilson does, they can contain him. And I think they're going to keep him to around 20 points. And I feel like now the big question is, will Jared Goff or John Wolford, who's ever at quarterback, do they get to 20 points? And I think they do. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And I think the Rams, with this mini upset, they're going to get the win. I mean, I think this Rams team is better than people think. I like their defense a ton. And, I feel like defense wins playoff games. Everyone says defense wins championships. So I'm liking what the Rams are doing. Sean McVay is still a good coach. And I feel like even if Goff is out, I don't think that's kind of a system type, QB that they have with Goff. It's not like he's this amazing Russell Wilson type where he makes that offense churn. He's a guy that's almost plug and play. And John Wolford, he can make some throws. Like, he's not, I don't think, awful. Not like Nate Suffield, like you guys were talking about earlier. So I'll take the Rams here in this one.
Right. So you talked about, you think that it's a plug and play. And I will say, Wolford's a great story, right? He changed his LinkedIn profile from like accountant to NFL quarterback last week. But the offense did not look great with him. They didn't play a great Cardinals team. And it was 18-7 the final, but 7 of those were on a pick six, and they got a safety. So the defense really helped them out. And looking at the Seahawks, it's been a tale of two halves this season, right? In the first half, it was Russell Wilson's MVP year. He had 28 touchdowns through 8 games. They were getting in shootout after shootout. Their defense was giving up 30 a game, but it kind of flipped week 9. That's when they got Carlos Dunlap from the Bengals, and it's when Jamal Adams returned from his injury. And since then, it's been kind of the opposite. In those 8 games, Russell Wilson only has 12 touchdowns instead of 28 he had in the first half. And the defense, they've cut the points in half from 30 a game. They're only giving up 16 a game, which I think is going to be key to this one, because you saw in the 2 meetings earlier with these teams this year, it was 23-16 Rams, then 20-9 Seahawks. So as you said, they're going to be able to hold the Seahawks around 20, but the Seahawks are going to be able to do the same. I love the way their defense is trending. When they played Goff a few weeks ago, he was hurt. He was baffled. He was confused. They couldn't get in the end zone. And I think if Jared Goff plays, it's not going to be at 100%. He's going to be fighting through that thumb injury. We'll see how much that plays. But now if you look at it from the Rams' perspective, the reason they've been able to hold Russell Wilson in check is because their defense stops exactly what he can do. As Nick talked about earlier, DK Metcalf kind of had his coming out party against the Eagles in the playoffs last year. Well, the Rams are number one in stopping the deep ball this year. So if there's a team that's going to take away DK Metcalf, it's the Rams with Jalen Ramsey. And if you do that, I think it's really fascinating because Russell Wilson, we've seen he's so good at getting cheap touchdowns, getting these deep balls. He's the best deep ball passer in the league. But when you take that away, you got to grind out drive after drive, and it's going to take a toll on them mentally because they're not going to be able to put up the huge numbers they were earlier. But going back to this game and who I'm going to pick, I'm still going to go with the Seahawks based on Russell Wilson. I'm going to trust him over Jared Goff in any big spot. Doesn't matter when. And I think even though their offense has been slower, I would be willing to bet they pick it up rather than the Rams pick it up. So I'm going to go Seahawks in a close one, 23-16. Maybe it's, they're tied late. Russell Wilson, game-winning touchdown. We've seen him do that throughout his career. But I'm going to pick the Seahawks here. I think it'll be ugly. I think it'll be a defensive game. But I'm going to pick him to make the plays, make the few throws, and do enough to win this one.
Yeah, the ugly factor is exactly what I'm thinking. It really comes down to who can make less mistakes almost. And that's where I also have my faith in Russell Wilson. I think it's that easy to say. He's the gamer. Goff is a great quarterback too, don't get me wrong. But especially if he's still kind of limited with his injury, he's not going to be able to kind of match that. But at the same time, you got the defense, like you said. It's going to be a great one. I'm liking that score prediction too, so it's going to be an exciting game.
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like also to add, not just Carlos Dunlap, but Jamal Adams, who they got from the Jets. He's played a lot better. I believe he has something like 10 sacks, which as a safety is really big for them. I mean, I don't know. I feel like right now, I think it'll be an ugly game. And I don't know. I feel like if that happens, I just like this Rams defense to create a turnover. Jalen Ramsey, I mean, he's been playing so good this season. Aaron Donald, we all know about him. If he gets that pressure up the middle, I don't know. I'm liking the way that defense is playing. And I feel like the offense, if they just do just enough in that game in week 16, they didn't have Cam Akers, who just started to come on, and then he got hurt. But now he'll be back. We'll see how that all plays out. But I think this may be maybe the best game of Saturday. I think it may be. I mean, you have a divisional opponent. They know each other well. It should definitely be close.
Right. So me and Nick, we're going with the Seahawks, but Andrew's going to be the lone wolf here and go with the Rams. And the last game, the night game, we have the Tampa Bay Bucks. They travel to the Washington football team. We all saw the last game played. The Washington football team handled business against the Eagles, 7-9. They're the third 7-win team to make the playoffs in NFL history. And this is one that I think is a really interesting matchup because the Bucks, they've won 4 in a row, scoring 37 a game. While they are hot, you have to look at who they've played, the Vikings, the Falcons twice, and the Lions. And the football team has a legit defense. And so I think that defense is going to make Brady uncomfortable. But what do you guys think, Nick? What do you think is going to happen in this one?
It's going to be a hard one to predict. If you look at the better football team, I think it's clearly Tampa Bay. But the football team is going to be hungry. It's going to be interesting. It's just like why I wanted my Giants to be there. You play against Tom Brady, and this Bucs team, offense in particular, is loaded. You're going to want to go out and upset them. And it is funny because technically it is home field for Washington. They're not the road dogs. They are the underdogs, though. So it'll be interesting for me. I would love to see Washington pull it off just because I don't need to see Brady do anything else with his career. But I don't know. I think it's just Tampa Bay has too much for a full game to not be able to overpower this football team. The game entirely depends if it's going to be close, if Alex Smith can manage to play. Unanimous comeback player of the year, obviously the award should be named after him. If he can play in this game, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I believe when Alex Smith has started, they've only lost one game, and I think they maybe won 5 or 6 this season with him. And their record without him is much more in the loss column than in the wins. So with Alex Smith, his eligibility for this game, or his availability, will be crucial. If he doesn't play, there's no chance, in my opinion. But if he does, it could be interesting. That defense in Washington's hungry. But I've got Tampa Bay winning.
I mean, that defense for Washington is just, especially the defensive line. and you're playing Brady, who's a sitting target. I mean, he's not a mobile QB. He's going to stay in the pocket, make his throws. And, when the Bucs have been on this winning streak, they haven't played good pass rushes. When they had trouble this season, they were playing teams like the Chiefs, who have a good pass rush, the Saints, who have a good pass rush, and they struggled on offense. And now the football team, they do have a great pass rush. Chase Young, he's so hungry. I think he's going to get ready to play in this game. And again, I like what Alex Smith is doing. I think he's going to play in this one. I like Terry McLaurin. I like Gibson, what they're doing on offense. But I think the Bucs, they have enough star power here to win, beat a 7-9 team. I really want to pick the football team in this one, but I already picked my upset kind of with the Rams. I think there'll be only one. And I think that Tom Brady makes enough plays in the end. I think it will be within the 8-point spread, and I think it'll be close. But in the end, I feel like Brady and those stars on offense will make enough big plays to get to the divisional round.
Yeah, I remember when this, when it was locked in that the Tampa Bay Bucks were going to play the winner of the NFC East. We didn't know who it was going to be at, but when they were locked into the 5 seed, I had that thinking, oh my God, Brady's going to get bailed out again. Easy first round opponent. They're going to get rolling and just, win a few games here. But if you take a deep look into this game, the football team is going to cause fits for him. So this year, when the Bucs are playing good defenses and playoff teams, they've played 6 of them. They're 1-5. Brady has 10 touchdowns and 9 picks. So they've really struggled against the top tier teams. I know Andrew's seen the Saints blow them out twice. And that's one that I think the football team has as good of a defense as anyone. You mentioned Chase Young. They're 6th in the league in sacks. So they're going to be able to get after Brady. And as you mentioned, he's a sitting target back there. He's not going to be able to move. So I think the key to this one for the football team is, can they just score? Can they get drives together? And this year, that's been what's nubbed them in the butt. They're 30th in yards per game, so they have not been able to move the football on offense. And so I just think at the end of the day, this one is going to be a very ugly one. We talked about the Seahawks game being ugly. I see this being way uglier. A lot of punts, a lot of turnovers. But I do think at the end of the day, the Bucs have so much firepower on offense, even if Mike Evans is unavailable to play, that they'll be able to get the drives, get the points necessary that maybe Alex Smith and the football team won't be able to do. So just like you, Andrew, I'll have the Bucs winning, but I'll have the football team covering the 8. I have 22-17, a really ugly one, a lot of field goals. Maybe we get some scoregami with some weird scoring, some safeties. But I'm going to pick the Bucs to move on, and I don't think the football team will just be able to score at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I do want to say, why is this the primetime game? I feel like, you have a 7-9 team. I mean, and I feel like that's all to do with Tom Brady, and that's a Tom Brady effect. But that just shows how much the national media just loves Tom Brady and what they're doing. That kind of annoys me a little bit as someone that's within the Bucs division. I just want to say that I think right now I would love to see that Seattle Rams game on primetime, but kind of is what it is. But I think it'll be a close game. An ugly one, though, to see in primetime. I mean, it'll probably be good, though, close at least.
Yeah. There's 2 other things that we should touch on quick before we go to break. And one is the Browns. So Kevin Stefanski, their head coach, and 2 other coaches, as well as a few players, tested positive for COVID. So Kevin Stefanski will not be able to coach. He's been coaching virtually all week, but on Sunday he will not be there. And I just wanted to ask you guys, do you think this makes a huge difference in the Browns? Obviously, Stefanski's a coach of the year candidate. He's turned them around from a laughingstock to an 11-5 football team. Will not having him be the end of the Brown season?
I think so. I don't think that will be the end all be all reason. Pittsburgh did not have a great end to their season. I think they're gonna realize though, okay, it's the playoffs now. I think Ben's gonna show up and be able to kind of lead that team. It is really unfortunate. Cleveland deserves, they deserve the full chance to be able to win this football game. I also think another blow for them is Joel Bitonio is going to be out with COVID as well. He's their best, besides Joe Thomas, probably their best lineman in history almost. The guy's a Pro Bowler almost every year. So it's a shame. This guy's been with the team so many years, and they finally get to the playoffs, and he's got to miss it. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Stefanski being out, yeah, it's huge. You have a head coach who's probably been planning this. He was probably planning, I think, that, Cleveland-Pittsburgh is a great wild card game. It does stink, but who knows? Maybe the Browns can be surprising and keep fighting like they have been this season. But I think it is gonna just really be too much for them to be missing both of those guys for this game against a very good Pittsburgh team.
Yeah, to me, it's a huge loss. I mean, it really is. I mean, I feel like football, I mean, of all the four major sports here, I feel like the biggest loss is in football. I mean, your coach means so much, and he's also their play caller on top of that. And he's done such a great job with the Browns this season. That just stinks for them. And again, I feel like it probably will be one and done. You're playing a Pittsburgh team who, look, they're a veteran team. You got a veteran coach, veteran QB. They've been there before. And I think it's just going to be too much for the Browns. And it's very unfortunate for them because they looked like they were, getting some momentum. And then this COVID bug really hit them hard over the last few weeks. And again, it's probably going to be the nail in the coffin for them.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. They've been waiting so long to have a playoff game, and they finally get one. And the guy who's led them there can't coach. So it's really a shame for Browns. We'll see if they can pull off an upset, but it's going to be tough without their play caller. Last thing I wanted to touch on, we have our resident Saints fan here in Andrew. There's been some chatter, Drew Brees, he's expected to retire after the season, take the NBC job to be an analyst there. And there's also some buzz with Kamara, if he's going to play or not. So I just wanted to get your take on that. Do you think this is really it for Brees? One last ride?
Yeah, this is his last dance. I mean, it is. I feel like the feeling around this team all season, since the offseason, it feels like this was his last one. And even he came today and he spoke to the media and he said he came back for the city and the organization. And like, this is why I'm here. It's for the playoffs. And, they'll be the 2 seed. And this Saints team's getting healthy at the right time. Kamara, the Saints hope for them to play. I think that's the hope. I mean, we'll see, COVID, it's unprecedented. We don't know what's going to happen. But I think the hope is for him to play. You should get Michael Thomas back as well. You should get some defensive pieces, and it's all starting to come together for the Saints and Brees. And I really like how Brees is playing the last few weeks. I think his arm, it's almost resurrecting himself. He's been able to throw the ball deep a few times, and I think that adds just another dimension to the Saints offense that we haven't seen late in the season in a very long time. And I think, you have the national media, I think they're writing off Brees, I think it's more of the lazy take to say, oh, he still can't throw the ball downfield. But you watch the last few weeks and, you have the deep ball to Sanders. You've hit a few deep balls down the seam to Cook. And now you're getting Michael Thomas back, getting Alvin Kamara back. I don't know. I'm really excited for the playoffs and see what this Saints run and Brees' last dance. See it. I mean, it should definitely be fun.
Yeah. Listen, I like Drew Brees. It'd be awesome to see him go out for the city and for you, obviously, with the championship. But we'll see what happens there. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. Andrew's going to be joining us again. We're going to be talking about the head coach openings, what we think's good, attractive, what we don't like as jobs. So stay tuned for that. back to One on One. I'm joined with Nick Feta and Andrew Galata again. And so with the NFL season wrapping up, every year we have a dump of news on Monday or Sunday, rather, sometimes, of teams firing their head coach. So this year there are 6 jobs. You have the Falcons job, the Jaguars job, the Jets job, the Chargers job, the Lions and Texans. All of these are really fascinating, and some of them are in different directions. So I just wanted to ask you guys, Andrew, I'll start with you. Which of these jobs stands out to you as the most attractive, which maybe had some pause?
Yeah, this week is always, you got Black Monday, you got the playoffs. It's always a very fun week. And I feel like you look at these jobs and you have a lot of intriguing ones. You have both the top 2 picks. You're going to have new coaches there. But the one I'm looking at is the Chargers job. I think that's the one that I'm looking at if I was a head coaching candidate, because you got Herbert. You have a good offense already. I think that offense is really solid. And I feel like they're a team that just couldn't finish games. And maybe it's a little of a culture thing. Maybe it's just kind of in-game coaching and how that's handled. But they're only out of the playoffs 2 years as well. They made it back in 2018. They won a playoff game in 2018, beat Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in his first playoff game. So I feel like this team is right on the doorstep. I think they kind of just needed a new kind of direction. Anthony Lynn just late in games. I just don't know what happened. And also it's bad luck too. Like, they played the Saints earlier this season and they lost because of a missed field goal to win the game. And those are the things that kind of just happened. But like over, you look at 2 years, 3 years, those games even out and you start winning them. And I feel like that's going to happen, I think, with the Chargers, especially with a new head coach. And I do think that's definitely the most intriguing job right now.
Yeah, if I got to pick, I'm going to pick 2 here. I would go Chargers, absolutely. I think Justin Herbert is going to be a top. Yeah. I don't want to pick a number, but he will be a top quarterback in this league come time. And then the other one I'm looking at, of course, is Jacksonville. You're basically guaranteed Trevor Lawrence is going there. I don't think that's going to surprise anyone on draft day. Brand new quarterback, rookie quarterback, brand new coach, pair them together at the same time, see if any magic can happen. I think it's that simple. And then I guess I'll throw in one more that I think is a lot of people may disagree with, but I kind of like the Atlanta opening. And here's why. They were 4-12 this year. I don't think they're that bad of a football team to be 4-12. I do think, however, their opportunity to progress even or play well, compete, is limited to a year or 2 from now. Matt Ryan is not old, but he's definitely not his Super Bowl season self. Julio Jones getting older. They still have weapons, though, outside of that. Calvin Ridley. The defense is all right. It hasn't been great, but I just think that team is so much better. They also got out to a terrible start. I think they were 0-5, maybe even 0-6. I think there's hope that they can come back next season. At the same time, I think since the Super Bowl loss, they've just been completely demoralized as a team. But now that Dan Quinn is gone, maybe a new coach can bring some new direction to that football team. That's a hope that I have for Atlanta.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not an NFL head coach, if you guys couldn't tell. But if I was, I think one thing that I would look for is flexibility, right? So am I going somewhere where I can turn around the franchise? Do I have the assets to make it my team? And if you look at that, Chargers, obviously you spoke to, you have cap space, you have your quarterback for the future. So I won't go into them. But then you have Jacksonville and the Jets. So I'll start with the Jags. You have the number 1 pick this year. You have 4 picks in the top 2 rounds. So whoever goes there is going to get his choice at any of these quarterbacks in the draft. Probably Trevor Lawrence, but we'll see. It's being reported actually that Urban Meyer is their number 1 candidate, Ryan Day too. So if one of those take the job, that's another discussion, because who knows where they go with number 1, having recruited Justin Fields and knowing these guys so well from their days in college. But back to the Jags, they have 4 picks in the top 2 rounds, and they have $81 million in cap space. So you're basically giving the head coach of that team a blank slate and saying, you build this football team up. You have the picks. You have the cap space. Now, the one area that is a cause for concern is their owner this week. Khan, he came out with some comments where if I was an head coach, I'd be a little discouraged, because he said he wants to take more of a hands-on approach with operations. I think that's always a bad mix when you add, an NFL owner doesn't have the background that these GMs have. They haven't scouted like them. So that's something that would pause for concern a little bit with me. But at the end of the day, if a guy's able to go there knowing what he's able to do, I think that'd be a really good job. And the other one, I had to talk about my Jets. Okay. So the Jets, they're right behind Jacksonville with cap space and 73 million. And they have 4 first rounders over the next 2 years. So I talked about that flexibility. You have the draft capital to get your guys in there. You have the number 2 pick this year. So you'll have a choice at an elite quarterback, hopefully in Justin Fields, Zach Wilson. You'll get the flexibility to make that choice. And there also is a good amount of young talent on this team. You know, I'm watching this team closely. Their defensive line, their interior linemen are set with Quinn Williams and John Franklin Myers. Those guys were clogging the run all year. And you have some guys on offense. You know, Mekhi Becton was a monster this year at left tackle. You have some wide receivers and Crowder and Mims. But I think also, you know, the lure of New York, right? So you're going to get to coach in New York, an awesome city. You're going to have a great fan base. You know, I'll say right there as a biased Jets fan. So I think those are some jobs that are really attractive. Nick, honestly, I'm surprised that you said the Falcons was an attractive job for you, because right now they're 24 million over the cap. And with Matt Ryan, as you talked about, you know, he's 35. He's just going to get older. We've probably seen the best of him. It's in the rearview mirror. So that's not a job that would entice me the way some other ones do, but certainly interesting. We'll flip it on the other side with you, Andrew. Which of these jobs do you think would be the most concern to, you know, to take? Which are you not liking as of right now?
I mean, there are a few. I mean, I feel like to me, I mean, Nick, you said Atlanta's a good one. I could see them being a little concerning. I mean, I feel like though they do have the quarterback and they do have a lot of weapons. So to me, that's not the most concerning. I mean, really right now, the Lions one is an interesting one because you have Matt Stafford, but I mean, they've tried with Matt Stafford for like 11 years now, and it's almost like it may be time to trade him. And look, they haven't done much with him. And I feel like that's not even Stafford's fault because I think he's really talented, but they just haven't been able to put anything around him. And I feel like that's not really going to stop. So you probably will have to end up trading him, or something's going to have to happen there. And that's something you're really building from scratch. And it's probably going to take a big rebuild. And you don't have the top pick to pick the choice of your quarterback. So that one would concern me. And then the Texans one, even though you have your QB, I mean, they gave up so much assets. I mean, besides the QB, they're in from some tough luck right now. JJ Watt, you're probably gonna have to trade him, so maybe you can gain some assets back. You won't have his big contract, but that's something. Those 2 jobs are they're ones that, I mean, look, any NFL job for any NFL coach, I bet they're gonna want, especially you look at coordinators. But I feel like those are ones that are definitely, you know, less enticing.
Yeah, I see no direction with Detroit whatsoever.
Exactly.
So that's really where I'm looking at it. I did say my Falcons one was controversial. I could easily say that's a horrible job to land as well. Houston is weird for me because, again, they've got certain guys who are franchise cornerstones. Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt is a questionable one now because he is getting older and has gotten hurt a lot recently. I wouldn't necessarily say I'd steer clear from it because Watson is still young. You want to make something out of that guy's career. And the Texans were not a bad football team just a couple of years ago. They were very good, in fact. So maybe you could try and turn something around there. But at the same time, maybe this year wasn't necessarily a hoax and they are that bad. So I would say lean away from there as well. I got those 2 spots, Houston and Detroit, as my just no-goes as a coach.
Yeah. So every year, usually in the NFL, we see at least 1, usually 2 first-year head coaches kind of surprise a lot of people, make the playoffs, right? This year you had the Browns and you had the football team with Ron Rivera. So it's going to be interesting to see which of these teams makes that jump because I don't know if any of them necessarily are ready to win right now, the way their teams are constructed. Maybe I'd argue the Chargers.
Maybe the Chargers.
How well Justin Herbert just played. But it is going to be interesting to see, you know, who goes where, which head coaches. There's always one out of the box hire that no one sees coming. So we'll see who that is. Last thing NFL I want to touch up on, it's with the Patriots because it's right now expected that they are going to move on from Cam Newton, right? You know, they had a very disappointing year, 7-9. Cam Newton really struggled through parts of the year. He did show some flashes, but for the most part, their offense was dreadful. They had the 15th pick in this draft, so I don't know if that's high enough to necessarily get one of the top tier QBs. So my question for you guys is it right to move on from Cam? You know, what is the direction of this Patriots football team?
I think you have to move on from Cam. I mean, they were awful. I mean, you can't kind of operate with an offense like that I mean, you look at his stats, they just were not good. He had more picks than touchdowns. You never want to see that. And I mean, just talking about Matt Stafford, I see Bill Belichick going to trade for Matt Stafford and him to come in here. And I don't know. I mean, in the AFC East right now, you would have Josh Allen. I mean, maybe Matt Stafford, Tua, we'll see what happens with him, but that's a lot of good football teams. And whoever the Jets pick, I mean, I don't know. I really feel like right now Stafford's a really nice fit there. Maybe a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, who they traded. I know Bill Belichick liked him, but they had Brady at the time, so they couldn't keep both. So maybe he's a guy that comes in there, but I feel like they kind of trade for someone. I don't think they're going to draft someone that high. I mean, 15, you're kind of right in the middle where you don't have the top guys, but then like, I don't know if you're going to reach for one. It's kind of right in the middle there. So I don't see them drafting a guy. I see them trading for one, and I feel like maybe a Garoppolo, a Stafford. I could definitely see them with that.
I'll say something quick on it, and it's bad news for any Pats fans out there, but maybe it's time you guys got to deal with a few years of just not being a good football team. Not everyone's.
Some teams do. It's them. Sorry.
Yeah, right. No one's able to get a great quarterback for 20 years like you were. You know, it's gonna be interesting to see because maybe no one wants to really trade a QB to the Pats. Maybe they don't have what other teams want. It's possible a trade could not happen. I don't think Stidham is really anything special as a starting QB. So it is very possible, in my opinion, likely that the Pats have a few years now where they're going to struggle. And it's frankly, it's their turn to struggle and be at the bottom of the AFC East. It's a cruel reality for me to say that, but I think it's a fair thing to say as well.
Yeah, I don't want to count them out just yet for the next few years because that will come back to bite me.
Yeah, true.
If I do. But it is interesting because they are kind of directionless right now. You know, people expected Cam to bounce back in a way he just didn't. So I have to agree with you guys. I think you have to move on. This marriage did not work out in the end. 15th pick, maybe you go get a guy. Maybe Bill loves a guy. You could always play it safe with free agency again. Jacoby Brissett's a free agent. That's the guy that knows the system. You talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. It will be interesting to see what they do there. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with some Knicks and some NBA talk. It's going to be a good segment. You know, the Knicks look good. We'll see how good we think they are. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Talked a lot about some bad New York sports teams earlier with the Jets and Giants. And dare I say it, we're about to talk about a better team. So right now, the Knicks, Nick, are a 5-3 team. You know, they just now beat the Jazz, a really impressive win at home. So this is the latest they've been over 500 into a season in 7 years. They've won 5 of 6. They're absolutely rolling. What have you thought of this hot start in the Knicks? Is it sustainable? Do you think they will keep this up?
I'm scared to say my answer to this because it's almost like it's a jinx. I'm gonna say yes, of course. Why would I not? Um, but it seems like a recurring theme with in New York especially is the culture. Tom Thibodeau came in and he is changing this culture of the New York Knicks. And you can talk to any player on this team. I'll start with the two guys who are, I would say, headlining the team, and Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. And they both say, yeah, we come in ready to play because of the coach. Like, he gets us ready. We want to play, but then when we go for him, we want to play even harder. And I think that's really where it's coming from. Randle did not play spectacular last season. We all know that. So far, his start this year is crazy. He's playing like one of the best forwards in the league. So if he can keep that up, maybe not the exact numbers of 22, 10, and 6 or 7. If he can just keep playing at a basically close to an all-star, if not an all-star level, and you get the support from guys. Elfrid Payton's had a pretty good start to the season. We saw Emmanuel Quickley with a great game. The other night, he didn't get as many minutes tonight. I saw Thibodeau always does his, which is an interesting approach. He plays a 7 or 8 man rotation, which has proved to work so far. But again, you ask to watch good basketball. When you ask that as a Knicks fan, or for just the Knicks as a whole, it's hard to come by. So this is definitely, we are not taking this for granted. I think the Knicks can totally keep it up. Maybe not the entire season, but you're out to a 5-3 start. They've won 5 of 6, like you said. Stay hot. Stay hot. Keep playing basketball like you're playing basketball. They've beaten some pretty good teams. Keep it going.
Yeah, last week I was on this show saying I'm going to temper all expectations. I'm always going to assume the worst. It's too late. I'm all in. You know, what they've done to it. It's only 8 games. I'm ready to get my heart broken by the New York Knicks. I'm all in. 5 of 6, as we just talked about. And Julius Randle, you said he's playing well. He is playing like an all-star. You know, before he just dropped 30 and 15, which he just did against the Jazz, he was at 22, 11, and 8. So this is a guy who, his career numbers are actually not that far off of this, which is interesting because the Knicks fans bashed him so much last year, and I feel like rightfully so. Maybe he got a lot of empty buckets late. I think that was fair to say. But this is a new Julius Randle. He's not turning it over as much. He's shooting the lights out. And you talked about the other guy, RJ Barrett. I don't think he played great tonight, but before that, he was playing consistent. His first time in his career, he had 25 points in back-to-back games. And it's just really encouraging to see a young guy like RJ, who some wrote off as like, the Knicks have the 3rd pick in a 2-player draft. Seen this a million times. Why bother? This kid's nothing. He's looking like he's a really solid guy out there. You talked about Emmanuel Quickley. He looks like he belongs in the NBA. Another guy, Austin Rivers, who was hurt the first few games, he's become a closer for this team. He's hit some huge shots this season. And as you said, it's competent basketball. It's the culture. We've talked so much on this show about the culture, how important it is. The Knicks are a perfect example of that. Tom Thibodeau was a guy who was I saw it as a parallel hire. I didn't think it was one that would bring the franchise to new heights. But through 8 games, it's only 8 games. We still have 60 plus to go here. They look really good, Nick. Like, this Knicks team looks like it could be a playoff team, which not many expected. And they look really competitive. And these are some good teams too. The Jazz are a playoff team. The Pacers are a playoff team. These are good teams they're beating. The Bucks obviously by 20 the other day. This isn't like they're beating up on the bottom of the league. Maybe it's too soon to say this, but I think New York Knicks are back. I think this is a team that maybe not can make a run long term, but they can be frisky. They can give some teams trouble, and they're not going to be a team that you look ahead to anymore of an easy win. This Knicks team is going to play hard.
Yeah, exactly. They play hard. They're hungry. They fight. They do whatever they can. Their defense is just in your face every single play. I would not enjoy playing against them. I really wouldn't, especially when you usually have the narrative as, we're playing the Knicks. Great.
Yeah.
Win. So, like, I'm beyond happy because it's finally good basketball, at least for now. But the real thing that is even more important is, yeah, you can lose games, of course, that's expected out of any team. But are you fighting and playing hard? And I think every single game this season, that will 100% be there. And it is the culture. We haven't even seen. I think he's been hurt since the second game of the season. First round pick Obi Toppin, and this is the culture that he's being brought up in. His first time, his first stint in the NBA, the first thing he's seeing is this culture. That's the first culture he is experiencing, and hopefully he's able to carry it over as quickly and as efficiently as possible. We'll see about that, of course, but that is how the culture and mindset he will have throughout the rest of his career and as long as he can be a New York Knick. So there's just still so much to be excited for with this team, and that's really, again, all you can ask for. I think as Knicks fans, you're getting more than you asked for. I don't want to be let down, of course, but at this point in the year, we're 5-3 right now. We're usually we're lucky if we have a win, really. So take it, be happy with it, and keep it rolling. Same message.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is how the Knicks have played, but there is bad news. It's that now I'm ready to get my heart broken again, which always happens in sports. So, I look for the Knicks to keep it up, and it's a different season because, earlier we were on the pre-show. I looked at the score, we're down double digits. It's like, oh, the Knicks are getting blown out. They're going to roll over, but they didn't do that. They fought back. They won the game, and we've seen so many teams where maybe it's close at halftime, so many Knicks teams, I should say, and then they get blown out in the third quarter. It's over in the fourth. This Knicks team looks like it's different. They're coming out of halftime ready to play basketball. So, yeah, I'm just really excited about the future of this team. Tempering expectations still, but having higher expectations than I've ever had as a Knicks fan.
Yeah, it's just, I don't even know. I would say excited is an understatement for me, really, because you have no really, I guess, yeah, there is something to lose, and it's games, right? But you look at the team, and it's guys that, frankly, the team is built this year. Last year, I hated how the team was put together. You had, again, I love Taj Gibson as a vet and a locker room guy, but you had him playing 30 minutes a night. It just, certain things made no sense. Marcus Morris was really a filler scorer player for us. He was not supposed to be a best player on a team, but he was because it was the Knicks. It's the culture that's changed, and I really think it is that simple to say, at least this early in the season. Certain cultures that I'm surprised by, and this is really what I wanted to talk about so I can stop bragging about the Knicks in hopes that it's not karma. A lot of teams who you would expect to be much better this season, at least early, it is still very early, of course, are just not playing up to par. You look at the Raptors at 1-5. Of course, they beat the Knicks. That was their only win. Figures. The Wizards dropped another game tonight after an astonishing performance from Bradley Beal. They're 2-7. I could keep going. We'll get to those teams, but I guess with those two teams in particular, I guess they both had high hopes because, Russell Westbrook with the Wizards, and the Raptors were champions 2 years ago. Yeah, they lost Kawhi, blah, blah, blah. But these slow starts, I get scared to say, are they going to bounce back? And then our teams like the Knicks going to fade? That's the scary part that I guess we don't want to really cover, but it is a reality.
Yeah. So let's go into more of the NBA other teams. And so you talked about some teams that have been disappointing. I'll talk about some other surprises other than the Knicks. The number one for me right now is the Sixers.
Yeah.
They're 7-1 right now. They've beaten some good teams. And I feel like we all kind of expect the Sixers to roll over. We've had huge expectations for them, and they've let down the last few years. But bringing in Doc Rivers has changed something. Obviously it's only 8 games, but it looks like they're finally ready to be title contenders again. I feel like this year it was pretty much, we're thinking Nets, Bucks. I think you have to put the Sixers in that conversation. Tobias Harris, who many criticize, overpay and whatnot, he's been stepping it up. He's a 20-point per game guy. Embiid is continuing to be a monster, 23 plus. And it's some other guys that Daryl Morey, the first-year general manager, brought in. Seth Curry, a lot of people thought that was a really good deal for Josh Richardson. He's stepped up in a massive way. He's giving you 15 a game on 50 plus from 3, while they're first in defensive efficiency. So this team is firing on all cylinders. Obviously, it's only 8 games. We talked about some teams are going to fade away, but the Sixers have a pedigree where they've been in the playoffs, where I don't think that will be them. Yeah. So they're one team this year that I'm high on, and I think they are going to surprise people when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. I think another team could do the same thing over in the West. They're the 2 seed right now in the Phoenix Suns, who finally these guys are out of the gutter. Devin Booker deserves it. Chris Paul, of course, great player, great leader. Anything you want to say about him usually is great. it's just really exciting, I guess, to see a sort of switch so far, if I may say that, early in the league. Um, Even I know the Warriors have been struggling, but they're back above 500. Steph's had a few great games. The NBA is just it's back and it's exciting, and that's really, again, all you can ask for is the excitement of the game. Of course, starting here with us in New York, Knicks and Nets playing well, and all across the league, you got teams surprises coming out of everywhere. So it's just great stuff.
Yeah, you talked about the Suns. They were the other team besides the Sixers I had highlighted.
Yeah.
They're 5-2, and they've beaten some good teams in the Mavs, Pelicans, Jazz, and Nuggets. Right, those are all teams. Maybe not the Pelicans. We expect those teams to compete at least. And so CP3, I think it's really fascinating because that was a deal that many criticized. Maybe we thought they were jumping the gun. Is this the right move for their franchise going forward? He has 2 years left on his deal at $85 million, so he's a huge deal. And so far through 7, now we have to keep emphasizing it's very early in the season, but it looks like it's paid off. It's not even just the numbers with CP3, right? He's giving you 14 a game. It's the culture he brings alone. He's going to get guys to work their tails off. He's going to get a Mikal Bridges, who's maybe been, lollygagging through the league a little bit, to play harder. He's going to push Devin Booker to be the best player he can be. And it's worked out so far. In defensive efficiency, they're 5th. So they're clearly playing defense at a much higher rate than they've ever played. And along with CP3, motivating them, he is still kind of a closer, right? He hit a huge shot the other day. I think he hit a game winner versus Utah or someone else. But just being able to take some of the load off Devin Booker, who in years past has been, he's complained about the double teams, even in practices. He's been the just de facto guy who's going to take every big shot. To have another guy alongside of him, I think it's a really good thing for his development and the Phoenix Suns as a whole, because they look like they're going to make the playoffs as of now. And there's someone that, we thought maybe was a little too early, but it looks like we're going to be wrong. We're going to go to break one more time. We're going to come back with Andrew, talk a little college football, talk the Heisman, talk a little quarterbacks. Last segment of the day. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Make sure to stay tuned. Segment of the show, we're going to talk a little college football. We had the Heisman last night. Devontae Smith, the wide receiver from Alabama, takes home the award with 447 first place votes. He's the first non-QB to win the Heisman since Derrick Henry in 2015, but you got to go a lot further back for the last wide receiver. That was Desmond Howard in 1991. So it's a long time coming for the wide receiver position. Devontae Smith had a very nice, obviously an amazing year. 100 plus receptions, 1,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, and he picked up the slack when Jalen Waddle went out. So I just want to ask you guys, what did you think? Was this the right choice for the Heisman?
Yeah. I also love the fact that they go to receiver. It's always so predictable almost, where you see, it's a quarterback basically every year. Derrick Henry was the last winner, rightfully so. So it's a breath of fresh air almost to see a receiver win it first time in 30 years. So I also, especially this year, because the Trevor Lawrence hype is deserved, rightfully so, but it was good because I was almost expecting you could not follow any college football, but no, you got all the big teams, Alabama, Clemson, blah blah blah, and you'll expect, okay, Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback for Clemson. You just hear that name and know this guy's a stud. So it was good to see someone fresh out there, and I think Devontae Smith is exactly that. I think he's going to be a stud once he gets to the league, make an impact right away.
Yeah, I mean, kind of with the Heisman, I feel like when you don't have a decisive quarterback winner, which you didn't have this year, then you go to non-quarterbacks, and this year was Devonta Smith, his season was just super impressive. I mean, he has over 100 catches. I mean, the 20 touchdowns in 12 games, that is an insane amount. And I know Alabama has a ton of weapons, and I know they were without Jalen Waddle, and that to me adds to, the impressive year from Smith because he was facing double teams or whatever defenses were throwing at Alabama. I mean, that just whole offense is dominant. He was dominant. And I feel like you put him, you go to the NFL, Nick, as you were saying, I feel like he is going to be a number one guy, and whoever gets him early, I think he's probably going to be a top 10 pick, maybe even top 5. I'm not 100% sure there, but you look at teams within the top 5, seems like the Dolphins, I could see, Dolphins, they need a number one receiver, and Devonta Smith, he's just that good. And I feel like he's going to be a big reason to why Alabama goes out and is competing for a title here against Ohio State. So again, I feel like right now, Devonta Smith, what a year from him. And just to show how dominant his year was, 30 years from the last wide receiver to win it. That's just, you look at all the great receivers that have played, in that 30-year time span. Devonta Smith is the one who wins the Heisman. So just a super impressive year from him.
Yeah, coming in second for the award was Trevor Lawrence, who it's kind of interesting because, we talk about him as this can't miss prospect, once in a generation, one of the best quarterback prospects ever. And he ends his college career, he just officially declared yesterday without a Heisman. So it is interesting to see after Trevor Lawrence, you had Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, and Najee Harris, the running back from Alabama, rounding out the top 5. Don't think it was very too controversial. I think Devonta Smith was the clear winner, especially when you don't have a quarterback who lights up the world like last year with Joe Burrow. But right now, we have a few more minutes. Let's just shift to QBs a little bit because we had a Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields duel in real life, and now we might be seeing in the draft. Trevor Lawrence is expected to go number 1 as of right now. But I kind of want to pick your brains a little bit. Andrew, I'll start with you. There's 6 guys I feel like that are getting talked about a lot. What do you say about these guys? Who is one of your favorites? Who are your sleepers? What can you tell me?
Yeah, so right now I feel like Trevor, I think he's definitely going number 1. I think that we all know that. And you said he didn't win a Heisman, and Peyton Manning also didn't win a Heisman. So just wanted to throw that out there, and turned out he was pretty good. So for sure there. And you look at what Justin Fields, I think right now what he did against Clemson, super impressive. And I was really impressed to see what he did because especially after the injury, because everyone talks about, he's as a runner and that's kind of where he beats defenses. He really couldn't run that much. He was more of a pocket passer, and he was just throwing dimes downfield. And again, Clemson, they're no pushover. Like, they have a good defense, and he just had an amazing game. And I feel like that kind of pushed him right now ahead of Wilson. I feel like it depends how he plays now in this national championship game. Right now between Fields and Wilson, I think that's the bigger debate. I think Fields is the more polished prospect, but I think Wilson has a ton of potential. That arm talent, it's just, it can't be denied. And if he goes to a team like a Patriots, I feel like that's where you're going to see him succeed the most. Someone that can develop him. I feel like if he goes to a team that, maybe can't develop as good, we'll see what happens with the Jets, but maybe they can't. He's kind of a prospect, needs to be polished. I feel like a lot of people are saying that about Patrick Mahomes. Everyone's like, oh, he needs to be developed. You put him with Andy Reid, and all of a sudden he's just that good. So again, I feel like right now, I think those are the top 3, and you go beyond that. Trey Lance is a guy no one talks about because he didn't play this season, but he's a guy that I think if he played, he would probably be in this conversation as well. And he's a guy that's extremely polished, and a guy from North Dakota State who, we know they're so good in that, FCS division, and they, produced Carson Wentz, who, obviously right now is kind of questionable to see his NFL talent, but he's definitely there as well. And then Kyle Trask just lit up the world in the college football world this year. And he's a guy with good intelligence as well. Again, I feel like right now, I mean, those top 6, I feel like you kind of split them up. You have like the big 3, and then you kind of have the other 3. But I mean, I feel like right now, this is a good QB class here, probably the best in a while.
Yeah, that last sentence was exactly what I was going to say. It's a stacked QB class. It's very easy to see that. What I'm hoping is, I mean, I remember we actually talked about this after our last show we did with the Dolphins. You guys were thinking maybe they should take one of these quarterbacks with their pick they acquired in the trade with the Texans. I say absolutely not. Keep Tua, but that can be another discussion.
I agree with that.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I think it's very interesting because there are a few teams who need quarterbacks desperately. Maybe the picks don't line up exactly where it is. I think with Fields, that dude he's extremely polished. If he can run and throw like he did in last week's game against Clemson, he has all the potential in the world. It's just, can he, really translate it? I have him as my number 2, I think, just because, he's that big name. He's that big guy on the big stage right now in the championship. And then Trevor Lawrence obviously should be, and I think will be, a Jacksonville Jaguar.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say is I do think the Jags, it's at least a question, or Dolphins, I should say, it's at least a question of 3. You'll never have a pick this high again. And Tua did struggle throughout the year. If you do think he's the guy and it doesn't work out, you're going to set your franchise back big time. And just to go off one thing Andrew said, Trey Lance is a guy I love also. Last year, he had 42 touchdowns and 0 picks. And I just think the only reason people aren't talking about him is because he didn't play. We got unlucky with the COVID year. One guy we didn't mention is Mac Jones, who played himself into this conversation this year. Many saw him as kind of a game manager going into the year, but he proved he's way more than that. He has a great deep ball. He was throwing dimes to Devontae Smith all season, 4,000 plus passing yards in 12 games, 36 touchdowns. The production speaks for itself. But I think that's going to just wrap it up, guys. We've reached our time. So shout out to Alec Woltz. He's the greatest producer there is. For my partners, Andrew Galata and Nick Feta, I'm Ryan Gregoire. One-on-One Nightly is a production of WFUV Sports.